6:45 a.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Danushka Medavala, read by Soundit Avam. The Premier holds talks with the European Union Exploratory Mission of the EU Election Observatory Mission. The President says that the submission of the Economic Transformation Bill marks the first step in economic revitalization. An allowance of 10,000 rupees for each flood-affected household. Minister JUN has instructed the IGP to hand over the case regarding threats faced by MP Harsha De Silva to the CID. The IMF says there is a strong expectation that Sri Lanka will reach agreements with external creditors soon. The President reappoints Shavendra Silva as the Chief of Defence Staff. In foreign news, Biden says Ukraine not authorized to use US weapons for strikes on Moscow. In sports, Bangladesh won the toss and chose to field the World Cup match against Sri Lanka, which is now being played in Dallas. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena held discussions with the European Union Exploratory Mission of the EU Election Observatory Mission at Temple Trees yesterday. The delegation discussed issues pertaining to the forthcoming elections in Sri Lanka and explained the EU's methods of election monitoring after entering into an agreement with the government and the Election Commission. When they said there were rumours regarding the next election, the Prime Minister stated that constitutional provisions are very clear on the presidential election and that already the Election Commission has made an announcement in this regard. He assured that elections will be free and fair. The team leader of the delegation, Mete Bekan, said that observers will be deployed across the country in all 9 provinces to meet with election officials, candidates, political parties, media representatives, domestic observers and voters. President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced that the government has initiated the first step towards economic stability by submitting the Economic Transformation Bill. He stressed that regardless of which government or leader takes over, it is imperative to adhere to this agreement to effectively rebuild the national economy. The President emphasized that a proper plan is essential for addressing the country's economic challenges. President Wickremesinghe made these comments during the inauguration ceremony of the cephalosporin injectable plant and the unveiling of the Meldol Reliable Relief Manufacturing Facility in Ekala recently. The new production facilities initiated by Sands Active Private Limited under the Melva Group represent a significant boost to the pharmaceutical sector. President Wickremesinghe, who unveiled the plaque and inaugurated the factory, also took an observation tour of the new facilities. The senior advisor to the President on National Security and the Chief of Presidential Staff, Sagala Ratnayaka, said an allowance of 10,000 rupees will be provided to every household affected by the flood. He stated that this financial assistance is intended for cleaning the houses. Additionally, once the assessment reports on all partially and fully damaged houses and buildings are received, the subsequent steps will be implemented promptly. Mr. Sagala Ratnayaka made these comments while participating in an observation tour yesterday to assist the welfare of the residents in the Kolanava area impacted by the adverse weather conditions. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Your next generation digital banking partner, People's Bank.
Minister JUN has instructed IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon to hand over the case regarding threats faced by the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance, Harsha De Silva, to the CID. Mr. Harsha De Silva told Parliament yesterday that the parliamentary probe into Sri Lanka's visa issuance process and the VFS global deal has resulted in threats to his life. He said that false media reports have emerged on the probe into the VFS deal and the visa issuance process, attempting to paint De Silva in a negative light. Addressing the Speaker, the COPF chair said he had come under tremendous pressure from MPs as well since the probe was launched into the controversial visa deal. The IMF spokesperson Julie Kozak says that there is a strong expectation that agreements with Sri Lanka's external commercial creditors consistent with the International Monetary Fund program parameters will be reached soon. Addressing a special press briefing, the director of the IMF's communications department said, overall, the IMF assesses that there has been sufficiently strong progress on the debt restructuring front. Providing further details, Julie Kozak said, more specifically, the authorities have been holding extensive discussions with external official creditors regarding an IMO or MOU with the official creditor facilities and the final agreements with the Export-Import Bank of China. Outlining future measures, Julie Kozak said, the next steps on the debt restructuring are indeed to conclude negotiations with external commercial creditors and to implement agreements in principle with the official creditors. Julie Kozak confirmed that the IMF Executive Board will meet on the 12th of this month to discuss the second review and the Article 4 consultation related to Sri Lanka. That concludes local news.
Enjoy seamless shopping. Open LCs, settle bills and transfer funds instantly, anywhere and anytime. With People's Bank Digital Solutions, you're empowered to do more, whenever and wherever you want. Unlock a world of modern banking conveniences with People's Bank, your next generation digital banking partner. People's Bank.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has reappointed General Shavendra Silva as the Chief of Defence Staff until 31st of December. An extraordinary gazette has been issued extending General Silva's term as CDS under Section 3 of the Chief of Defence Staff Act No. 35 of 2009. General Silva's new term runs from 1st of June to 31st of December this year. He was first appointed as the Chief of Defence Staff on the 1st of June 2022 and came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight, more than 25,000 dengue cases have been reported and 9 dengue patients have died during the period in the past 5 months. The National Dengue Control Unit Director, Consultant Dr. Siddharth Samaravira told a press conference held at the Presidential Media Centre that due to the current floods, the dengue disease may develop into an epidemic and the full public support is essential for the government's plan to control dengue disease. He said that it is not only a health problem, but also an economic and social problem, and that the Health Ministry alone cannot control dengue without the public's assistance, and came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Making headlines this morning, Israel defends attack on school, continues offensive in Gaza Strip. Biden says Ukraine not authorized to use US weapons for strikes on Moscow. And the Danish Prime Minister attacked by a man in Copenhagen. Friday marks 8 months since fighting broke out between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces are continuing to conduct intense operations there, even though they have been criticized for carrying out an attack on a UN school that left 40 people dead. The military said on Thursday that it conducted an airstrike on the school in Nusrat, which is located in central Gaza. The facility is run by the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Health officials in Gaza say the attack left 40 people dead, including 14 children. They also say that 74 other people were injured. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the attack. He said the UN premises are inviolable and must be protected by all parties at all times. US President Joe Biden says Ukraine is not authorized to use American weapons for strikes on Moscow. Biden said in an interview with ABC TV on Thursday that American weapons are authorized to be used inside Russia in proximity to the border with Ukraine. He said the US is not authorizing strikes in Moscow on the Kremlin. Biden recently approved the use of American weapons by Ukraine to strike Russian forces on its side of the border. The US had previously only allowed Kiev to use US-supplied weapons against Russian troops inside Ukraine. The change in US policy came after Russia stepped up its offensive, especially in the eastern region of Kharkiv. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has been left shocked after being attacked in the street in Copenhagen, her office says. The assault took place on a square in the center of the city where a man walked up to her and hit her. The attacker has been arrested. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said it was called a despicable act which goes against everything we believe in and fight for in Europe. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was beaten on Friday evening in Copenhagen by a man who was subsequently arrested. The Prime Minister is shocked by the incident, the Prime Minister's office said in a statement without giving further details. The police said they'd arrested a man and were investigating the incident, but declined to say more. Back to the headlines of the world news. Israel defends attack on school continues offensive in Gaza Strip. Biden says Ukraine not authorized to use US weapons for strikes on Moscow. And the Danish Prime Minister attacked by a man in Copenhagen. And that concludes world news.
Development news.
The Minister of Transport and Highways, Bandula Gunawardena, announced that the government plans to complete the construction of the third phase of the Central Expressway from Pothuhara to Galagedara by 2025 and to complete the project by July 2026. Minister Gunawardena visited the project office located in the Lihinigiri area of Pothuhara and attended a special presentation on the current progress of the project, which was also attended by officials in charge of the project and construction company representatives. The total distance of the third phase of the Central Expressway is 32.45 kilometers, and it consists of 4 interchanges such as Pothuhara, Polgahavela, Rambukana and Galagedara. The related interchange construction is currently underway and came to you in development news.
Moving on with sports news.
The 15th match of Group D of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup is now being played between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh in Dallas at present. Bangladesh won the toss and chose to field. That came to you in sports news. We take a look at business news next.
Go ekatiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyamata set wenna aswahagena dakapuhina habe karanna youth ekata niyamata set wenna friendship ekamenna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Sri Lanka tourism surpassed the milestone of 900,000 tourist arrivals, fueling optimism within the industry to meet year-end targets. The accomplishment marks a striking growth, a milestone previously reached only in August of the preceding year. This landmark was achieved with the arrival of 3,374 tourists on the 1st of June, which pushed the cumulative figure to 900,153. It underscores the substantial progress made in the tourism sector, reflecting high interest and engagement with Sri Lanka as a favoured destination for travellers. During the first 5 days of June alone, Sri Lanka welcomed 15,666 tourists, pushing the year-to-date figure to 912,445 visitors. That's business news, economic news up next.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekatiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyamata set wenna aswahagena dakapuhina habe karanna youth ekata niyamata set wenna friendship ekamenna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
On to economic news. Finance State Minister Dr. Ranjit Siambala yesterday said that 44,430 vehicles have entered the market even during the period of import ban. The State Minister said that there are 38,144 motorcycles and 6,286 cars among them. This was revealed at a discussion between vehicle assemblers and the State Minister about the removal of import restrictions. Although restrictions have been imposed on the import of vehicles, the assembly and parts of sale is still going on. Representatives of many local vehicle manufacturing companies were present at this discussion, and there was an in-depth discussion about granting permission for vehicle imports too. They mentioned that while removing import restrictions, the government should also focus on their local assembly business as well. That's economic news.
Weather report.
The prevailing rainy condition in the southwestern part of the island is expected to enhance to some extent during the next few days from today. Showers will occur at times in the western, Sabaragamuwa, northwestern and southern provinces, also in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. Fairly heavy showers above 50 millimeters are likely at some places in the western and Sabaragamuwa provinces, also in the Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts. Several spells of showers will occur in the northern and north-central provinces and in the Matale district. Showers or thundershowers may occur at a few places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batiklo districts in the evening or night. Strong winds of about 40 to 50 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the northern, north-central, northwestern provinces and in the Trincomalee and Hambantota districts. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. The Premier holds talks with the European Union exploratory mission of the EU Election Observatory Mission. The President says that submission of the Economic Transformation Bill marks the first step in economic revitalization. An allowance of 10,000 rupees for each flood-affected household. Minister Tiran Alas has instructed the IGP to hand over the case regarding threats faced by MP Harsha De Silva to the CID. The IMF says there's a strong expectation that Sri Lanka will reach agreements with external creditors soon. The President reappoints Shavendra Silva as the Chief of Defence Staff. Biden says Ukraine not authorized to use US weapons for strikes on Moscow. And Bangladesh won the toss and chose to field at the World Cup match against Sri Lanka, which is now being played in Dallas. On that note, we conclude this morning's news broadcast. And now it's back to Sanal this Saturday morning to keep you well entertained on a rather gloomy, overcast morning. A very good morning to Sanal, and it's all yours.